Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, He Needs a New Password. I work in a help desk hotline for an international company of around 50,000 employees. To understand why I felt such glee when our head of IT called about needing her password reset, I'll have to explain a bit of backstory. We've been handling the first-level service desk for all sites around the globe, mainly Europe, North America, and Singapore for the better part of a decade now. As you can probably imagine, working in a contractor-based help desk, meaning we're not part of the actual company but instead are employees of the call center, is not great. New tools are introduced for the users to utilize, but they're borderline useless and lack features the old software had. Processes can be unclear, nonsensical, or just plain dumb. You can give feedback, but they sure are going to be ignored. So after around 10 years of dealing with it and working with what we got, our service department got outsourced to the cheapest competitor available. A real slap in the face against us. No help desk is ever perfect, but we always thrive to meet our targets and get work done. Subsequently, everyone hated the change of IT service providers, except for company treasury. Service quality plummeted. Most of our guys lost their jobs and only half a dozen of us still work in our original jobs since the new IT service is so ludicrously bad. Our ramp down has been delayed for close to a year now, so at least someone knows what they're doing and gets things done in first-level service desk. You can imagine the jaws dropping when the architect for the whole IT restructuring got an award for her work in saving the company money, which they probably lost again due to every other department having significantly more IT-related issues that are just not being solved. It was no fancy, well-known award, but it involved a red carpet and a gala. For basically ruining IT service. So this award-winning architect calls me this one night because she's forgotten something basic, changing her password before it had been expired for too long. She is now on an important business trip to oversee the last regions where servicing being converted to the new service provider. And now she couldn't get any work done because she couldn't access her laptop. As I mentioned earlier, the tools and processes we have to use are bad. Sometimes you could work around them. But in my case, I was too happy to tell her, no, I cannot generate a new password for you since you haven't accessed the password self-service tool before. Dumbfounded, she replied, what? You cannot reset my password, because I have not accessed the password tool previously, which I now cannot do because I don't have a valid password to access the tool with? I smiled to myself as I continued, exactly that. Since we've lost our tools to reset passwords manually, the only other alternative is sending an automatically generated email to your manager, who will have to bother resetting the password for you. A realization struck her then. These managers of hers are all just one step below the CEO. They're in the executive committee. Busy people. And I would need to send them an email, asking them to kindly run after the password reset for her to do her job. All because she ignored her frequent password change prompts. It was glorious. Sure, I still knew a way of resetting the password manually. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Wasn't allowed by the process, too. Isn't there any other person you could send this mail to, she asked. And I confirmed, sure, I could, to the manager one step above that. Which would mean the CEO himself. She was not amused. She refrained from threats, but when customers ask for your name with clenched teeth, it's usually not because they're smiling so hard. In a frantic tone, she declared all of this process to be nonsense and all but ordered me to send her the password manually to her private phone number. To which I calmly replied, as head of IT and processes, of course you know I'm not allowed to do that. In addition to not having the technical means. The rest of the call was fairly straightforward. She'd promised to send me a mail with an exception authorization so I could reset the password for her in particular. To which I told her if that's what she intends for us to do, set passwords for anyone claiming to be the head of IT and almost threatening me. I mean, I know it was her since I knew her voice as our head of IT and the phone number matched. But still. After a bit more skirmishing, she brought up the "you are refusing to help me" argument, to which I countered the only possible thing left for me to do is open a ticket for the second level and have them figure out a way to get her a simple password. She ended the call angrily soon after. The ticket about getting her a password is still not resolved, by the way. Guess we're not the only department with a grudge against her. The next story is called, Improve My Swiping. A little background. The site I worked at for the client had a swipe card system. When you show up in the morning, you swipe in. And when you leave for the day, you swipe out. The site is old, some of the machines don't always work. You hold up the wrong card from your multiple badges, it will still beep, making you think you swiped. The swiping was always preached to be about safety. It was a large site. And they wanted to know if you were on site or working in the building in case there was an emergency of some sorts, and they could tell if you were there or not. Now anyone with any common sense knows this is for Big Brother to watch your hours, but never preach that way. Everything was fine. I worked lots of hours. Lost count how many times I came in slightly early, stayed late, etc. swiping away. But then management decides that swiping needs to be looked at closer. You stayed an extra 1 hour yesterday but left 16 minutes early today. Explain why you left early. Not caring that you put in extra hours all week. If you left a second early, they harped on you. Fine, whatever, continue to work away, learning what they let slide for leaving early. Well, now this being an old site, sometimes the network didn't record, the machine wouldn't record, etc. Everyone knows I was there, working my standard hours plus extras all the time. One day, I am told my swiping needs to be better. I defend it with IT tickets on the machines, etc. Doesn't matter, there is another machine by the other door. I can use that one. Alright, I can use other machines and I can swipe better. Tell management I can do better. One thing the client doesn't mention but I knew is if your swipes matched your timesheets, your company would automatically get paid. I'm annoyed. But it is their site, so I got to follow their rules. I think back to my orientations, safety meetings, all the jazz they throw at us. Review the booklets, etc. Everything about swiping is for safety, so they know where you are working and if you are on site in case of an emergency. The next day I get to work and swipe in like a good employee. Get to work. I am asked by one of my bosses to go to town and pick something up. Sure, no problem. I swipe out as I am not on site anymore. This would be the first time during a shift, as we never swipe multiple times, just once in the morning, once at the end of the day. I wanted to ensure I followed safety procedures. I go to town, grab the item and bring it back to the other office where it was going. Well, I swiped in there as I am back on site. Deliver the package, talk with the co-workers for a bit. Head off to go back to my original office. But I am not working at this office. Better swipe out and swipe in at my office I am working at. A few hours later, I get asked to cover the rest of the day at the third office location. Sure, no problem. Since I am switching offices, and for safety, so they know which building I am in, I swipe out, and go to the new location and swipe in again. Finish off the day and swipe out. I had my fun for the day. A couple of days later, I see one of the bosses working with the client to figure out some swipes. The system had messed up on an employee and they couldn't tell if they were coming or going as the system had recorded too many swipes on one day and some double swipes hours apart. The system ending up reversing the following days, so it essentially looked like I was working night shift now. It took them a couple of days to sort out the system and get my time back to normal. I am questioned why I swiped so much that day. I just quote the safety talks and procedures for verbatim back at them. Boss looks at me and calls me an idiot. Half laughing. Then says just swipe once in the morning and once at the end of the day. Another coworker looks at me later in the day as we are leaving and asks why I did that. I was told I had to be better at swiping and it was for safety. Coworker looks at me, laughing, saying you just did that to make them mad. I just smiled from ear to ear as I walked out, forgetting to swipe. Not a word was ever said to me again about being better at swiping. The last story is called, You Have to Work, No Matter Your Condition. Around 2 years ago, I used to work for this grocery store right around the corner from where I lived. I loved working there. I constantly had something to do and when the store wasn't busy, I would talk with my coworkers and just enjoy the night. My main position was in the hot food area. But since we were only a small one, only one worker would be in at a time. A regular night would involve me slicing meat, serving food, and putting the baked goods into the oven. After about 6 months of working there, I found out that I was moving town. I felt terrible and gave my manager my 2 weeks notice. I felt terrible because this was out of the blue and they had to train someone new, so I offered to work without pay for the 2 weeks, so they wouldn't lose money. My manager said no, it was fine, but he greatly appreciated it. Out of nowhere, I developed severe pain in my mouth and discovered that my wisdom teeth were coming in and were causing some weird damage to my jaw. This resulted in me needing emergency surgery on the weekend after my 2 weeks notice was up. The day after my surgery, my manager texts me. We need you today. The scheduled worker called in sick and no one wants to cover his shift. Actually, I just had surgery last night for my wisdom teeth right now and have taken a bunch of medicine to soothe the pain. Also, my 2 weeks notice is up, so I technically don't work for you anymore. Do I sound like I care? We need you and if you don't come now, I will see to it that you don't get hired anywhere else. So, how does working sound like now? I was shocked. Before today, my manager had been the best boss to work for. So I was utterly surprised. Alright. I'll be in soon I guess. You better be, or else. About 5 minutes later, I get dropped off at work. Normally, I would walk there, but I had taken so much medicine that I could barely remember how to get there. What took you so long? I have had to cover for you in the bakery for the past half hour. His last text was only sent 5 minutes before that. I quickly apologized, walked into the bakery, and started doing my work. Normally I am a good person who wouldn't start trouble, but because of the medicine, I was ready to start making the manager's life a living hell. Every time he asked for someone to help him out with a task, I would volunteer to help. Each time I would make myself fall off of the ladder or cause food to come crashing down on me. He kept telling me it was all right, but as the night went on, I could tell his blood was starting to boil. So I continued. As the end of the night neared, my job was to clean the meat slicer, and I had a plan. I began to clean the meat slicer, but I accidentally turned it on. By this time I had no problems controlling my body, so I came as close as I could to cutting myself without actually doing it. The manager walked into seeing me do this and immediately screamed at me and told me how I could have hurt myself. I just responded with a confused look on my face and laughed. He just sat there, looking at me, and pulled me into his office, where he began screaming at me for all the stupid things I had done that night. The falling off the ladder, the dropping food on me, and now the meat slicer. Instead of getting upset because it was technically his fault, I just sat there with a blank look on my face, pulled out my phone, and showed him the messages he sent me. He went silent. I stood up and told him, "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," and walked out. The grocery store ended up firing him for mistreating the employees. The store also gave me a hefty paycheck because they decided to settle out of court instead of fighting a lawsuit that they would inevitably lose. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day.